Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Midweek Wire. This is 21 Wire Live. We're coming on the live streams. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. We're streaming out live on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, as well as X, and also on BitChute and a couple of other platforms. We're pushing this out on demand. Thank you for joining us. We did our first midweek edition last week. It was very successful. We had Freddie Ponton on as our sort of co-pilot on this, and we're going to bring Freddie back because, we had certain things planned to talk about. We had prearranged a certain topic, but all of that got washed away in the tsunami that has ensued, partly because of what this bomb that Donald Trump dropped, a proverbial bomb, let's just say, in the last 24 hours regarding Gaza, and the total dismantling and annihilation of USAID, United States Aid and Development Agency, International Aid and Development Agency. This is unbelievable blow to the deep state, but is it really? We'll find out exactly what's going on. I'm going to bring onto the stage Freddie Ponton. He is a contributor at 21st Century Wire, independent journalist, investigator. Freddie, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Patrick. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
As you know, Freddie, we plan to investigate and talk about something very Nord Stream related. We will continue that conversation. We just have to put that on the back burner for the moment because of stuff that's happened just over the last 24 hours. I mean, I didn't see this coming, but then again, I didn't see the dismantling of USAID coming either. So two big kind of bombshells in the last couple of days. Things are happening very quick. So this is the Trump administration, Fred. First couple of weeks, breakneck speed. They're dominating the media space. The media is having trouble keeping up and reacting. Forget about the opposition. The Democrats are paralytic right now. They're like literally despondent, practically paralyzed. They don't know what to do. This is like shock and awe treatment by the incoming Trump administration. I mean, just us trying to keep up with and, digest the ramifications. So first of all, what do you think about these two big events? We'll break down the Trump Netanyahu Gaza thing first and then USAID, but just what do you think about this whole kind of onslaught? This just shock and awe incoming Trump tidal wave of like disruption and change.
Well, I think it doesn't come much as a surprise. I think Trump had made it very clear that he was a major supporter of Israel. And if you take money from Israel, of course, you got to expect Shylocks to come and get his money back or his favors back, his pound of flesh. And that's exactly what happened here. And they didn't wait long. Clearly the situation in Israel is rather dire with the coalitions that is weakening by the hours. And a lot of course, intimidations and a lot of kind of pressure onto Netanyahu, to carry on the massacre and the genocide that has been taking place in the Gaza Strip, and of course, eventually moved on to the West Bank as well. So, of course, they had to do something, and we saw the IDF, the Israeli military, to really spread out thin, really, and becoming very vulnerable as well. So there's a matter of national security. I think from a defense point of view, Israel understand that it's vulnerable, and there was no time to waste. And this trip, of course, comes ahead of the discussions that are due to happen in Qatar with delegations to discuss the second phase of the ceasefires and the potential release of more hostage, and then, of course, the removal of the IDF from the northern part of Gaza. So all that coincides, a lot of pressures, a lot of tensions, and Netanyahu is very practical. I mean, he's what it is, but he's extremely practical. He knows how much power, how much strength and weight he has on the U.S. administration. He really pretty much comes across as someone that literally owns the United States Congress. So he's there to make Israel great again. He doesn't care much about the United States and what are their priorities. What he cares about is staying alive, because what's waiting for him is simply the court and perhaps the jail for him and his wife. So this is the best opportunity he had. He's speaking directly to the boss, and what he wants to do and make sure is that this conflict is going to keep on going as long as it can, as long as it's possible. And using the US flag in Gaza was perhaps the plan from day one. So that's a very interesting development. Of course, I think most of the team working around Trump's were also surprised by these announcements. I don't think this was really planned. I think this were part of the product of side conversation prior to the meetings, and then eventually Trump's had to make a very clear statement to reassure the donors. I mean, you take billions from the Jewish lobby and donors in the United States. You just have to pay you got to pay that back, and that's the shape it takes.
Let's just look at the news clip here. If this is the BBC, we'll listen to this part of the recording, and there's just been some incredible reactions from this, pretty much from every single conceivable angle. But here's the press conference with Netanyahu.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
What authority would allow you to do that? Are you talking about a permanent occupation there?
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs.
Okay, Fred, look, he said everybody I've spoken to. My guess is, like the Abraham Accords, everybody I've spoken to doesn't include any Palestinians. And like, this doesn't count maybe some, guy who owns 100 car dealerships who's Palestinian in Long Island, New York, or, the political advisor for Mahmoud Abbas. That's not the stakeholders in this case. We're talking about Gaza. We're talking about Hamas. We're talking about millions of people who live there. I mean, so I really get the feeling, Fred, and you'll hear Netanyahu's little bit after this, but this isn't very well thought through, because there's no way that this is going to be accepted by Egypt, Jordan, or any other country in the region. I mean, it's a complete affront to pretty much everything. Forget international law, UN membership, UN resolutions. What about the 60,000 plus people who've been killed in Gaza, and then the 150,000 have been injured and maimed, and so on, and Lebanon, and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
It's as if these don't really factor in, and you're just doing a property deal here. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think the U.S. couldn't care less about international humanitarian law, international law as a whole. Otherwise, they would be a member of the ICC, and Bibi Netanyahu would have been arrested on U.S. soil, which is what he deserves. This is, at the end of the day, someone that has been accused of crime against humanity. These are serious crimes, Patrick. People go to jail for the rest of their life. So this is not something, and the United States seems to be pretty much happy to disagree with the ICCs and welcome a war criminal. There's just no other way to present that. Now, of course, if anything that Trump has said on the podium was true, then you wouldn't see the Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Jordan all in concert, basically on paper and in their news, saying that they are completely objecting any of the comments that Trump has made. So it's a sales pitch. He's trying to sell the idea that everybody loved the idea and he's the greatest realtor in the world, and Gaza will be his a strip, it's going to be his next colony, if you will. I think this is a lot of miscalculation here, but we can also discuss the reason behind, the undiscussed reason behind all this. And interestingly enough, they merely geopolitical in natures, rather geoeconomics. There are geoeconomics natures and geoeconomics that are playing in the background of that, which has forced basically not only Netanyahu but the United States to go into a kind of a speed mode, if you will, to fast track the control of this particular region. So it's not just Gaza, and that has to be very clear. This is part of the greater Israel, and this is part of Israel hegemony in the Middle East. And the target, I believe, is primarily Iran. And I'm going to tell you the reason why I believe that. First of all, if you remember, before Trump's inaugurations, about 3 days prior to Trump's inauguration, the Russians signed a very important and very comprehensive agreement with Iran. And it's a partnership agreement that is very comprehensive, 42 articles, which is the double size of the Russian special agreement with North Korea, which has half of this amount of articles. And if you read through these articles, you will see that Russia and Iran are having a lot of agreements related to trade with regards to the Caspian pipelines, with regards to developing Iran infrastructures or revamping Iran energy infrastructures. But if you also read between the lines, you will see that there is a massive emphasis on the NTIC, which is the International North and South Transportation Corridor. And that's really, I think, for me, the key here. We can see 3 BRICS countries, namely Russia, Iran, and India, with a great potential, immune from sanction of the United States, completely in a position to bypass the US dollar and its kind of control over the international financial systems. And they are able to develop new routes. And this route is going to be very interesting because it's going to place Iran at the center of an energy hub in the region, which is going to be in between South Asia and, of course, Eurasia. And Eurasia, as we all know, this is an important place for geoeconomic and geopolitics. And if you control that region and its trade, you'll probably be the master of the world. So we saw the Chinese working different way, different routes. And I think that this Trans-Caspian route, which is going to involve, of course, Azerbaijan as well, it's going to be very interesting because it places really BRICS countries in a very strong position with the ability at the center not only to bypass the sanctions, but also to undermine the Suez Canal, making it almost irrelevant. So these routes are extremely dangerous because the control of natural resources, the control of energy resources is really at the center of all this, the problem. When you hear about nuclear negotiations, all this kind of, various distraction, if you will, this is not the center of the topic. The center of the topic is to stop basically the creation of a multimodal and a multipolar worlds. And China has been very slow, I would say, in terms of developing it. Not the planning has been very slow, but to go on the ground and starting to show some differences, the process has been rather slow. But we can see now the Russians moving with billions of rubles into these projects and understanding that India is going to want to take advantage of this opportunity. Very important for India because now they have maritime, they got inland port, they can use Iran as a hub basically for energy, but also for goods all the way down to the Afghanistan border and straight into Eurasia. So these routes are important. We know the United States, we know the UK has been trying to interfere in this particular region for a very long time because they know how important this region is. And I think that's what we are saying here. We're saying basically an intimidation where the US flag will be in the Middle East until into Iran. We hear. And if you go along with this project with the Chinese, with Iran, with India, with Russia, you're going to be in trouble, and they're going to want to control that. So there is a military intimidations there that is far beyond Gaza, and I think Iran has been targeted.
Yes, and there's also the coercion aspect, Fred. Because that U.S. taking over Gaza, owning land there, with the Israelis turfing out the Palestinians. That obviously the Abraham Accords off the table, but it would be like the U.S. Trump could say, well, we were planning to do it. Look, I did the speech. We could back off, though. How Trump is. Oh, yeah, we could back off, but you have to do something for us. We need to drop oil prices. And we're starting a sovereign wealth fund. We need you to put more money into Wall Street, treasury bills, buying U.S. debt, the petrodollar.
Yeah.
the thing that Saudi basically signed off of, got out of, not fully, but like on paper, they basically got out of their option on the petrodollar. And, so is Trump doing a 3 or 4 way deal? Because this is basically how everything's leveraged to this guy, right? What do you think?
It is. I think, you have to look at it as, the American election. There are swing states, and there are swing states in the United States, and there are swing states in the world of geoeconomics and geopolitics. And the swing states happens to be in the Middle East at the moment in time and in Eurasia. It's important to control the outcome so that you can, swing these people towards your national interest. And that includes obviously taking care of your debt and making sure that the circumstances and the economic circumstances are in your favor. The problem is the United States is facing a 36 trillion debt, which is just simply humongous. And it's not the tariffs or any kind of movement as such that is going to make any difference. It's going to bring a little bit of money in the piggy bag of the treasury, and it's going to obviously trying to reduce that debt. But it's I wouldn't say it's meaningless, but it's just simply not enough. It's not going to cut it. So if you take into consideration the threat, the economic threats, really, that is going to alienate the United States from a complete part of the world. I think there's also a desperation from the United States to regain control over these corridors, these trade routes, over the control of natural resources. And those that have already taken billions from the United States, namely Jordan and Al-Sisi in Egypt, they're going to really kind of face a major disruption, if you will, and that's going to be in a form of an uprising, domestically speaking. It is quite. I think that the country is on the verge, of the precipice. It could go over the edge any time now, because nobody has supported whatever the Israelis have done in Palestine, and the support of the U.S. was really unwelcomed. So if now the U.S. is planning to plant a flag there and claim ownership of the Gaza Strip, this is just not a small move.
Put troops on the ground.
Troop on the ground. We have to talk realistically about what does it mean. What does it mean is troop on the ground. This is about moving against international humanitarian and international law, moving basically 1.8 million people that have suffered so much already, that are completely exhausted, that are so much looking forward to get back to their home, even if their home has been destroyed. We know the Palestinians are extremely resilient, and their lands is what keep them there. Nothing else. Their land, their attachment to the land, the historical attachment to this land. So pushing them out, it's not going to be an easy task. And you can bet on the Hamas that they're going to put up a serious fight here, because it's really their land and their nations that they are fighting for. So it's real becoming a matter of survival for the Palestinians. And then, of course, at the borders, this is going to create a tremendous chaos in nations that are seen to be aligned with the United States program for Gaza. So Iran has been very kind of reserved. I've looked for some information about Iran's position on that. They obviously described Trump's comments about taking over Gaza completely.
We have a clip from.
Okay, you have. So it's great.
One of the Iranians. We'll go to that in a second. But what you said, Freddie, is kind of important. Is if there's U.S. boots on the ground, and that's I presume a plan like this would include that, protecting U.S. engineers, U.S. builders, or who's going to get the contract? Probably Damac, one of these Trump-related developers that's very wealthy in the Middle East. I mean, it's just insane thinking about it. But one U.S. soldier gets hit, gets IED'd, gets shot, and all of a sudden, all fury, hell breaks loose. And you know how that's going to play in America. How dare these ungrateful Palestinians? We've come here to give them, glass towers and prosperity, and this is how they treat us. They're attacking our soldiers and who are fighting for freedom, fighting for the Palestinians' freedom. America, how dare you, kind of thing. And basically Netanyahu would be, we told you you can't negotiate with these terrorists. We warned you. and now we're going to have to do this the hard way. I can kind of see the thing breaking down like pretty catastrophically. Let's just finish and listen to the rest of this, and then let's go to the Iranian leader as well, but listen to the rest of this.
With something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction.
I mentioned again tonight our 3 goals. And the third goal is to make sure that Gaza never poses a threat to Israel again. President Trump is taking it to a much higher level. He sees a different future for that piece of land that has been the focus of so much terrorism, so many attacks against us, so many trials and so many tribulations. He has a different idea. And I think it's worth paying attention to this.
Wow.
I don't know where to start on this, Freddie. I mean, first of all, Bibi's looking very peaked. If you've noticed, he does not look well. So he's physically, he is not in great condition. That's the first thing. Put that off to the side. How did Gaza become a pile of rubble? I don't hear this discussion at all. No responsibility at all from America or from the Israelis. They're totally trying to gaslight the public on this. It's just kind of almost insulting to the intelligence and to the humanity of everybody that has witnessed the atrocities of the last 15, 16 months, going on a year and a half. So it's just no accountability at all. How did you get the pile of rubbles, Donald? How did it become so unlivable? Well, it just kind of happened. And then Bibi saying we can't let Gaza be a threat to Israel. What about Israel being a threat to Gaza? Where's the guarantee there? You could build every building and perfect Dubai replica theme park, and if there were Palestinians living there, Israel can come and crush it in a moment like that, and without any discussion or nothing. They could just say, oh, they're using the underground parking garages for Hamas command and control. You know how deep those parking garages go on these towers, right?
Yeah.
50 meters in some cases. They go really deep, okay? Really deep. And deeper than any of the Hamas tunnels in some cases, much more better constructed. So this is just not even realistic, Freddie. It's the more we look at this looks like a gambit for a negotiation or some kind of maneuver. I don't know. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I'm not buying it either in terms of, for the reason it has been presented. This is not about democracy. This is not about bringing peace and comfort to the Palestinians. We can clearly see the state of diplomacy that we've experienced and witnessed for the past few years with the Biden administration. There was no diplomacy. This is just basically doing the bidding of Israel, and that was the job of Anthony Blinken. And if you look at the state of the media in the United States, they have a big also chunk of responsibility for not really asking the hard questions. Some people have done, and they got shocked out of the press conference. And that's the problem. So we are dealing in a world that is very unilateral, if you will, and they've tried to imbricate the European Unions and Europe, in this particular hegemon train, but it kind of didn't really picked up, if you will. And I think at this stage, I would say that this stage, the United States is understanding that it's going to have to do what it wants on its own. And it's still this old kind of mentality about the United States being the biggest powers in this world. And they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, and they can buy out anybody. So it's coercion, it's intimidation. This is all, the United States that you don't want to see. This is not the old US, leaning of the world, fighting for freedom. That train has sailed. It's gone. It's really about money. It's really about big economics. And that is what the mandate of Trump is going to be. It's going to be about big money, big ticket, controlling the finance, controlling the money that goes out of the United States, and making sure that the flow whether it's gas or the flow of oil, is going to come their way and it's going to be under the control of the US dollar. That's simple as that. Any other road, any geoeconomics that's going to go against this plan is going to be labeled an adversary, a peer adversary to the United States, and a danger to its national security, because it is a danger to its national security, no doubt. No doubt. There's a complete world building itself out there with its own rule, independent, immune from sanctions, and that has grown up at such a fast pace. I mean, BRICS Plus, if you look the Astana, the meetings, the quality of the conversations, and our intelligence, how much diplomacy and reason there is amongst the peers of the BRICS Plus. Everybody wants and understand that there is something to gain, and more importantly, their sovereignty and their independence from the US dollar and hegemony. So US is in trouble. They just don't want to admit it, but they are in massive trouble. And we're going to see more of that. It's only the beginning.
And you brought up some really important points, and we can definitely unpack some of those. I mean, let's go straight to basically what you were talking about. And I will actually, before we do that, here's the Iranian leader here. We'll play this clip here. This is, I forget, I believe this is the prime minister or the foreign minister. I'm not sure what his title is, but you shared this with me on X. So I'm going to, let me see here. Yes, the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi. And this is what, he's got an interesting novel solution to this to this Trump situation here. Let me see if I can bring him up and see what he's saying here. Hold on.
Palestine cannot be deleted from this region. Palestinians cannot be expelled. So my suggestion is something else. Instead of Palestinians, try to expel Israelis. Take them to Greenland, so they can kill two birds with one stone.
So that's an interesting solution, Fred. I mean, did you hear that? I mean, we're saying take the Israelis to a new homeland, in Greenland. It's a bit colder, of course, and the beaches are.
What I see here is a foreign minister that is simply not impressed whatsoever by the rhetoric coming out of the new US administration. He's just laughing. You can see it's like he's making a joke out of it. I mean, this is basically the United States saying they're gonna basically come in Iran's backyard, and they don't seem to be impressed whatsoever. And again, the reason why is because the comfort of this comprehensive partnership agreement with Russia, and there is a lot of security and defense, element in this particular contract and agreements. So we're going to see a lot of exchange, a lot of, as I say, cooperation, and Moscow will definitely, provide the Iranian Air Force with the Sukhoi S-30 fighter jets, and then they're going to give them the Panzer, the Targ, the Buck missiles, and then of course the S-400S. Air defense system. So they feel very comfortable about being able to provide enough resistance, and I would say present the United States with a real deterrence plan here and strategy that's cannot be undermined by the United States armed forces. So US-Israel's attack on Iran has been a debate for quite some time, but it's never been materialized, because I think the US and the Israelis intelligence knows how much Iran is capable of defending itself, and how long and how difficult it will be to take control over Iran. So I don't think this is on the map just yet. I think right now it's intimidation.
Yeah, not yet. There's Iran's proven that it can reach out and touch Israel and touch every U.S. base in the region. So there's no way they can get around that. Now, on that multipolar question, and going back to, here's Marco Rubio, and he did this interview with Megyn Kelly, who's not with the networks, has her own podcast. She's former Fox News here. We'll bring this up, this bit here with Rubio. So on that issue of multipolarism, a lot of people are shocked to hear this coming out of a Trump administration, because it's all about America first, maintaining our position in the world, etc., not giving any inch to the Chinese. And then you have this. Let's listen to this. And I think we have one possible explanation for what we're actually seeing here. So here's what Rubio's saying, but we'll try to read between the lines, if you will, Fred. But listen to this first. Here we go.
I think we spend a lot of time in American politics debating tactics, like what we're going to do, who we're going to sanction, what letter we're going to send or whatever. I think it really has to start with strategy. What is the strategic objective? What's the purpose, the mission? And I think the mission of American foreign policy, and this may sound sort of obvious, but I think it's been lost. The interest of American foreign policy is to further the national interest of the United States of America, right? I mean,
America first.
Well, and that's the way the world has always worked. The way the world has always worked is that the Chinese will do what's in the best interest of China, the Russians will do what's in the best interest of Russia, the Chileans are going to do what's in the best interest of Chile, and the United States needs to do what's in the best interest of the United States. Where our interests align, that's where you have partnerships and alliances. Where our differences are not aligned, that is where the job of diplomacy is to prevent conflict while still furthering our national interest and understanding they're going to further theirs. And that's been lost. And I think that was lost at the end of the Cold War because we were the only power in the world. And so we assumed this responsibility of sort of becoming the global government in many cases, trying to solve every problem. And there are terrible things happening in the world. There are. And then there are things that are terrible that impact our national interest directly. And we need to prioritize those again. So it's not normal for the world to simply have a unipolar power. That was an anomaly. It was the product of the end of the Cold War. But eventually you were going to reach back to a point where you had a multipolar world, great powers in different parts of the planet. We face that now with China and to some extent, Russia. And then you have rogue states like Iran and North Korea you have to deal with. So now more than ever, we need to remember that foreign policy should always be about furthering the national interest of the United States and doing so to the extent possible, avoiding war and armed conflict, which we have seen 2 times in the last century.
Okay, so he's saying that, it's like you listening to Alexander Dugin talking about multipolar world, accepting the thing that we thought that, the U.S. would never accept, which is, the advent of something other than unipolar hegemony by the United States. So there it is. That's Marco Rubio. And so do you buy it, Freddie? Because obviously the other things that are happening out of the other side of the American mouths are showing that they're not entertaining multipolarism. They're actually angling for more dominance, at least in the Middle East, as we were discussing. And then Marco Rubio just came out. I'll bring this up in a moment, tweeting praise for Donald Trump's Gaza real estate development plan. I mean, that's not multipolarism, is it? What do you think? What do you think about this? The hypocrisy that's kind of emerging here.
Well, the entire speech, if you will, is lacking of the key word, the essential word, which is diplomacy. Not one stage he pronounced the word diplomacy. So it is telling you something. It's telling you things that basically the United States is no longer in a position to use diplomacy to arrive and to protect its national interests. It has to be done by different route, by different means, And I also I kind of like the fact that he mentioned about, the Chilean will do what is best for the Chilean. What is he talking about the Chilean right now in this conversation? Is it because Peru just got a major contract with the Shanghai Corporation and they're going to be running the show there? It's probably because he's responsible for the, of course, the diplomacy and the foreign policy in the Western Hemisphere. And he's going to have to deal with South America, which is another, nice nut to crack, So I think this is, a lot of things happening. I think this administration is going to want to chew a lot, not only in the Western Hemisphere, but this particular problem in the Middle East is going to be their downfall. There's no doubt about it, because it's just full of trap. It's going to be trusting partners that might have and might see different interests at a different time. Things are changing so fast. Nothing is carved in stone, I would say, in this particular part of the world. And especially when the money starts to flow and you can see Chinese and Russia and Iran working together and securing these new corridors, these new trade roads, and the Caspian Sea, the European, Azerbaijan, big energy power starting to now becoming, more and more closer to Russia's, but keeping options as well open with the European Union. Azerbaijan was just unbelievable because they were happy. You know, when you are an independent power, you're equipped to deal with the multipolar world. You're equipped for that, and that means that it allows you to deal as well as with the United States, with Europe, as well as your partner in the Far East and Southeast Asia. So there's really no difficulty, and diplomacy is, you know, it's very simple in that case because there's common good, there's common grounds. You know, everybody benefit from this relationship. What the unilateralism brought by the United States and what Rubio is trying to say is that we're going to need to change how we do things because we can only recognize that the world is becoming a multipolar world. And the United States has abandoned diplomacy for such a long time. It's been a bully of the world for many, many years with its currency and its troops on the ground, killing people. That's all they've done. And Rubio, perhaps, you know, with his background and his kind of, you know, his kind of a Hispanic origins and so on, he might be a little bit more sensitive to that and realize that the approach is wrong. However, he needs to understand that Trump has really pretty much his hand tied on the Israeli dossier, on the Palestinian cause dossier. He's basically, he was bought in. He was really, he took money. He took money and the Shylock is coming for him. And that's all it is. The rest, as I say, it's going to be a lot of distraction and a lot of tit for tat. But the reality is geoeconomics, and Rubio understand it. But it's not going to be an easy task because they're so behind. The United States has been so focused, spending billions and trillions on war efforts, you know, on bullying, on subversion, and USAID being part of that, you know, going across Europe and Eurasia and, you know, spending money, working together with the CIA, various intelligence agency from the Western world, trying to destabilize, to turn these countries around in the interest of Europe and the US national interest. But this is not kind of delivered what was hoped for, and there's been a lot of resistance, and I think there's going to even be more resistance for the year 2025. We're going to see more resistance everywhere.
Yeah, I think so. Here's Rubio just a moment ago talking about the multipolar world, Fred, and here he is, Secretary now. I'm used to calling Senator for so many years. Secretary Marco Rubio. Gaza must be free from Hamas. At the President of the United States shared today, the U.S. stands ready to lead and make Gaza beautiful again. Wow. Okay, make Gaza beautiful again. Our pursuit is one of lasting peace in the region for all people. But, you know, in reality, we're sort of like, that's what we're dealing with there. You know, I mean, this is a meme, but so in a way, Fred, this is almost, to me, this is, and whether you believe October 7th was allowed to happen or was intended to happen by the Israelis, or the Israelis intended to happen, but later and were surprised that it happened that early, whatever the case is, the reaction from it, the way it's played out, and how devastating it's been for the IDF, for Israel's brand internationally. You could see what they were trying to do propaganda-wise after October 7th, and it seems to have blown up in their face in the most epic way. And then this comes along. This is the finishing kind of move on the property deal of Gaza and the West Bank. And every Arab is looking at this meme. So, Freddie, it's now like whether you're in Egypt, whether you're in Jordan, whether you're in Lebanon, even the beards in Syria, like the penny's got to drop eventually, but the Iraqis, Saudis, the Gulf states, Yemen, pretty much everybody. I can extend that to most of the Muslim world as well. There is no doubt or question what the U.S. and Israeli intention is now. It's ethnic cleansing. It was to do a genocide, and under threat of completing this genocide, ethnic cleansing under the barrel of a gun, under threat. And so there's no, they can't say that the plan wasn't to empty it out, because now you can pretty much come and say that without any reservations, right? I mean, so in a way, in a strange kind of way, this is kind of, I'm also looking at this as potentially devastating for Israel and devastating for America in terms of their image as an honest broker. Do they really think that the the whole Arab and Muslim world are going to bow down and say this is a good idea? I mean, Freddie, so it's like the quiet or long-term backlash of this for America running their empire in the Middle East, it's really not good. And I don't think that's what they intend. What do you think?
Oh, well, it's not good at all. And the reason for that is simply because of lack of planning, the lack of intelligence and political intelligence and diplomatic intelligence. You can compare it with Ukraine and NATO. You know, this operation was supposed to succeed. You know, Russia was supposed to go down very quickly. And it didn't go down that way, as we all know. And the circumstances on the battlefield speak for themselves. And then Gaza is the same. Israel thought that Hamas going to go down. So there is a planning in this, but the planning goes wrong. Nothing goes always according to plan. And it's definitely the case for Israel. It did not go according to plan. And it's quite clear that the resistance, and so the very brave resistance of Hamas, which are freedom fighters, which Rubio said that he likes to support. He supports freedom fighters. Well, that he should be supporting Hamas in this because they are fighting for the land and for their freedom. But the plan went wrong, so it's kind of really exhausted the IDF capabilities, Israel defense capabilities. Of course, the attack by Iran has also exposed the fragility of the Israeli defense systems as a whole. And then, of course, spreading their effort thin, you know, through Lebanon, getting a ceasefire, and then, of course, moving further to the blue line in the Golan Heights, you know, to capture some land, some water resources, all that. It's just painting an image of Israel that is despicable, you know, and anyone a bit of compassion and empathy will say, but these people are just brigands. These are vagabonds. These are just simply thieves, you know, and they're not interested in peace. They're interested in taking and taking advantage as well. And that's coming to an end because the US obviously unwavering support for Israel has brought them onto this bad plan. It is a bad plan, and US was brought into this bad plan, and they're trying to get out of it. Biden couldn't do it. There was no outcome, a positive outcome. None of the goals that was laid out by the Israeli government were achieved, and Gaza still remained under the control of Hamas. And now they have a ceasefire, and the IDF is due to leave part of Gaza. This is a defeat. You got to call it what it is. And Trump won't accept that. Netanyahu won't accept that. They have this common bridge, and they're going to say, let's go out there. Let's deal once and for all with this situation, because for the long term, so this is the idea of planning. The medium and long term is to say, we're not going to be very popular with what we're going to be doing, but we can take that hit. People will forgive us. But at the end of the day, we'll create a small little Dubai, a massive intelligence and military operation sponsored by the United States government, who's going to enrich everyone and then give us a nice control, making sure the Suez Canal remain in our control and making sure that Iran is not in a position to develop his logistic and his transportation corridor. So that's really the big plan. There's nothing really hidden. It's just really the way it's presented, the way it's done. We're not dealing with sophisticated diplomats or politicians. This is ruthless, and it's going to have some backlash, as you say, and we're going to see it. And I have a bit of ideas on how this is going to evolve, but I don't want to go into speculation.
Well, I can tell you this for certain, that even if it was true, and even if this would happen, and you know, they're building these big, beautiful, you know, beachside resort townhouses for the Palestinians, state of the art. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a great real estate, beautiful beaches. Trump said it's going to be like the Riviera in the Middle East. He actually said that. Okay, so do you really think that settlers living in those like horrendous prefabbed American suburb cookie cutter homes and kibbutzes are going to be happy if the Palestinians are living in Dubai next door? No, they're looking at those and they're saying those are ours. Oh, these Palestinians are now living in our buildings that we paid for, the Americans, our allies, or whoever pays for it. So that's actually ours. This is the Israeli mentality. It's not, nothing there can ever belong, of any value can ever belong or be used by Palestinians. This has been the case all along, and this will continue to be the case. So what Trump is proposing is a bait and switch. Okay. You have to be really, really naive to think that they would do anything for the Palestinians of any value without some long-range plan to take it from them by force, or to buy time to get rid of them altogether before they start building. So, I mean, come on. Based on everything that's happened, really, do you trust the Israelis? I don't.
I don't trust them for 1 second. And as I said, the strategy from the Israeli camp is always the same: is to have someone else picking up the bill.
Yeah.
And if you remember back a year and a half ago, it was the same discussions about who's going to pick up the bill for the reconstruction. Let's Europe rebuild. Let's the United States rebuild. Let's the Arab world, Qatar, and everybody rebuild. We're not going to rebuild anything there. So they destroy it, and other people will rebuild it, and Israel will take his little cuts on everything that comes in and out of the country. But the reality here is the real questions for our American friends is, what's in there for you? The American taxpayers, what do you get out of that deal? Because I don't see anything for you. All I'm saying is your money is going to be sent towards a project which has never going to benefit you, not even close. Okay. All you're going to be left with is the bills to pay that's going to increase, like we had in Europe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, actually even earlier, probably 4 years ago, when the price starting to increase, really drastically. That's what you're going to experiment, because you want to pay the debt. You're going to have to talk and embrace the inflation debate because it's going to be on your daily news, and you cannot have it both. You just simply cannot have it both. Yeah, you cannot have 36 trillion debt and telling the world what they should do. The world has reacted a long time ago, and you're starting to think when you hear about Rubio saying our mistake is we didn't have any plan. This is really kind of are you kidding? Are you kidding? No, it's obvious, obviously. So he didn't need to tell us that because we knew it. I mean, for those that pay attention, but clearly for the American people, you got the news, the State Department guys is coming, is telling you, we never had a plan, and every time we think about it, well, strategy on the global level, it's not something you develop in 1 year or 2 years. This is a long reflections. And if you want to get it right, you're going to have to get the right people at the table. And I'm afraid I don't see anything intelligence coming out of this administration. I think the best move Rubio can do now is try to go to Brazil and secure Brazil. That's his best move right now. If he wants to do something good for the United States, he's better secure Brazil before someone else does, because that's the pearl to secure there. I hope the Brazilian will have obviously and embrace their sovereignty and do what is good for the Brazilian people. My good friend from Brazil, I want them to do well and don't fall into the US trap. And do what's right for your country. You're a rich country. You have a lot of friends around the world. You don't need this entrapment.
Well, the other thing is Rubio's selection is he is bilingual. He's very smooth and very likable, and he'll do very well in Latin America. So he's got to bring some cooperation, some deals, and secure some relationships. And he's going to do so very persuasively. And so for the Monroe Doctrine, the Western Hemisphere, he's the perfect man. So as you can see with the Middle East, it's get down on your knees to Israel, because Paul Singer and the Israeli mega donor class are the ones who backed Rubio for his career, backed his presidential run in 2016, backed him for everything, and are totally behind him here. So he's locked in for the Middle East he is the Secretary of State for Israel, just as Tony Blinken was. Tony Blinken did the dirty work of the blood-drenched hands of Tony Blinken. He did the slaughter. And I don't think Rubio, I can't see Rubio being up for that sort of level of dirty work that Blinken did. So Rubio will be there just to rubber stamp things in Trump's inner circle. Howard Lutnick and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, and all these, they'll handle the Israeli business. But they're going to be in for a surprise. Now, back to that multipolar discussion. So here is Arnaud Bertrand, and a lot of people were pointing to this post, which was on his X feed, and he's basically saying he's trying to break down what this all means in terms of the multipolar world and where the U.S. is going. And this is what he said. So he's saying it's becoming clear and clear that what we're looking at is a seismic shift in the U.S. relationship with the world, between the U.S. dismantling its foreign interference apparatus like USAID, Marco Rubio stating we're now in a multipolar world, etc., tariffs on allies like Mexico, Canada, the EU as well. He said this is effectively the U.S. saying our attempt at running the world is over, to each his own. We're now just another great power, not the, quote, indispensable nation, aka the global hegemon. So it looks, quote, dumb, as the Wall Street Journal just wrote, if you are still mentally in the old paradigm, but always a mistake to think that what the US or any other country does is dumb. I agree with Arno there. Hegemony was going to end sooner or later. And now the US is basically choosing to end it on its own terms. It is the post-American world order brought to you by America itself. Now he goes on, and in principle, I agree with this, theoretically, Freddie, but in practice, they're so tied up. And the biggest, weakest part of this equation is the state of Israel and the US relationship with it. And until that is dealt with, decoupled, or they cut themselves loose from the Israeli lobby, what Arno Bertrand is saying here, they're not going to be able to successfully execute this, not in a kind of comprehensive way. They'll be able to do it piece by piece. And the Middle East will continue to be a problem. Yemen is not going to sit back as well and watch what's happening. They're going to intervene and get involved as well. And not just that, the Palestinians, the resistance is not going to die after what's happened. It is clearly a right and a wrong existential historical narrative that has been built and formed over the last year and a half, and it's just not going to go away. All those kids that were like 14, 15, and 16 and 17, by the time the new year turns next year, they're all going to be 18 fighting age. Okay. And there'll be hundreds of thousands of them that would dream of nothing more than to fight for their people, for the honor of their people and all the dead family members that have been killed by the Americans and the Israelis. Okay. That's the reality. Born fighters. Fighters. You're not a born fighter in the United States. Sorry, you can find the best, quote, warriors, and they all got Navy SEAL podcasts now, real tough guys running around Afghanistan, protecting heroin growers and stuff like that. I mean, that's what America's warriors have been doing, running around Afghanistan, Iraq, arresting goat herders, school teachers, and taxi drivers, and throwing them on Gulfstream jets to Guantanamo, where they can torture them. So there's people lording over that. Like, that's what America's warrior class do. Okay. The Palestinian warrior class, they're born warriors, and they're not going to, what's been done to them, it will define their outlook, their worldview for the rest of their lives and the next 2 or 3 generations, and probably across the Middle East as well, probably through Asia. People have looked at the situation, and young men growing up are going to look at that and say, there's a cause. There's a cause on this planet that I'm going to get behind. I mean, do people in America, they're celebrating their, I mean, I don't want to use the derogatory terms that I'm thinking of in my head, but they're kind of like very high right now on Trump's victory. They're cheering this on. They're saying this is great. America is going to own Gaza.
Yeah.
And they're not taking into account the people who live there. And they haven't asked all the neighbors whether they want to, do anything like this. So it's not going to happen. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, Freddie, but I don't
No,
see.
your analysis is spot on. The thing is, if you're going to go, and like Rubio say, if you're going to go into a planning mode and trying to plan, for medium and long term, you need to be aware of of the time of the clock. How much time do you have left? That is the first question you should ask yourself. How much do you have before this all fall apart? And I can only see Israel as a factor, as an actor that is going to get basically the United States and is going to take the United States down with them, because this is simply just not sustainable. And anybody that has lived in the Arab world understand the predicaments and understand the complexity of the regions, and of course the hypocrisy of many states that have favored their economic interests and ties with the West and the United States, instead of, standing by the side of the Palestinian, at least for justice. You don't even have to agree with the Palestinians. You don't even have to like them, but just for the sake of justice, for the sake of humanity. These people, these countries, some of these countries are unspeakable. I've come really to, I knew they were bad, but really this last year and a half has been an eyes opener, and I've realized how bad and how deep this goes. And unfortunately, as I said, to obtain the stability of this region, you're going to need to provide some goods. You can't just keep on hammering someone and hoping that, and doing the same thing and hoping for a different result. They've been hammering the Palestinian for more than 40 years. What kind of result, what kind of peace have they got? None.
No.
And what they want to do, they want to remove them. That's the solution, the final solutions. Let's, relocate these people in countries that don't want them. That sounds like a good plan. That sounds like something that's really going to go wrong. And again, I feel sorry for the American people, because, unless you're going to clean up, and we have the same problem in France. So don't think that this is me pointing the finger. I'm pointing the finger at my country as well, because we have the same problem. We have lost the control of our foreign policies, our diplomacy. The big decisions are made by foreign powers in Brussels. We have a major influential Israeli lobby in France that has been controlling this country and the media for a very, very long time. So we have the same problem. That's something that needs to be addressed. And unless we're going to address it, well, we're going to go down. Who's going to go down first? It's irrelevant. What matters is, can we recover from that? And what are the solutions available for the Western world? Because I was born in the Western world, and I'd like him to do it well, but not with blood on my hands. I just can't be co-sponsoring that. And that is the reason why I point my fingers at my own governments and at the United States government for, aiding and abating crimes that has been taking place for way too long. This is the time for people now. Government has let us down. There's no leadership anymore, and we have corporation really running the world. This is the time for people to take control again of their government if they want to have a country to live in peacefully. Because when the wave is going to come, and there's going to be a wave, is whether we're going to be partner or whether we're going to be enemies, and simple as that. And that's the natures of history. If you look back, all these empires that falls, it never gets pretty. And it always ends up in the hands of the citizenry to finalize, and how the outcome is going to be, not in the hands of the governments or the corporation. Don't forget that.
Yeah, Europe is absolutely ripe. You look at the arrogance of Ursula von der Leyen and the attitude of some of these failed leaders that are just laughing stocks pretty much right across. Trump's only managed to do a better version of bread and circuses for the U.S. public, because he's got the skills for that. But, you still got to deliver. And, you're just delivering for a certain segment of your own population, and not even for your whole population, and definitely not for your neighbors in the world. And it's all a zero-sum game. In other words, anything that we lose or anything that you gain is a loss for us. That's kind of how I see this kind of Trumpian mentality shaping up, which is that the world is a zero-sum transaction. And so just the last thing we're going to break and wrap it up, Freddie. I mean, we haven't even really got on the USAID train story, and that's just a whole incredible rabbit hole. I've got so much to say on that. We'll have to do that another time. But on the Middle East thing, I do pay attention to the Arab press. And of course, this didn't get much coverage, but we're going to show you something that's quite interesting here. And this is from Global Revolt, and if it appears on Global Revolt, it's a very small account, but always has very important alerts on it. And so here is the King of Jordan, King Abdullah. There he is. So let's say, what does this say? This is King Abdullah of Jordan. What does he think about Trump's real estate development plan? Let's look at this here. Well, let's translate that. Middle East Eye, citing sources in Amman and Jerusalem. Jordan is keen to reach a peaceful solution, but is prepared for war with the occupation if Palestinians are forcibly displaced to its lands, to Jordan. So that's Jordan saying they are prepared to fight Israel if the U.S. and Israel insist on pushing the Palestinian population in the West Bank or Gaza or whatever into Jordan. So this is, and I've always said this. I've been saying this since November, that any forcible displacement from the West Bank into Jordan is going to destabilize the royal family. They won't be able to rule anymore. They won't be able to handle it. It's already tense there. So, and the U.S. knows this. Okay, Israel knows this, and I really think the United States, Britain, and Israel are planning a regime change operation for Jordan, and the same for Egypt. Sisi's had a good run for the last 13 years or whatever it is, and he's getting on. So they'll be looking to replace him, probably with another military leader or something like that. But this is, to me, significant because, Freddie, if the royal family in Jordan fall, what sort of a message does that send to the rest of the Gulf states who are already paranoid, as al-Sisi is, about Muslim Brotherhood, uprisings that can be stoked by Qatar, the United States, and British intelligence, and the Israelis? They use the Muslim Brotherhood as a tool to threaten and destabilize. They were successful in Syria. It helped Al Qaeda and ISIS come into power. It helped to break up the country from the inside. So they're quite cocky right now, I think, in Washington and Tel Aviv. They've got the results they want. They're starting up sanctions again on Iran, maximum pressure executive order signed by Trump. They really think that they can, completely reshape this region, Fred. And so Jordan's always been a tight ally and friend of the U.S. It's pretty much under U.S. and British control. It's basically a colony. And the royal family's held court there, but they won't be able to survive if Israel gets what they want, which is to push the Palestinians, the final solution. The Israelis need more Lebensraum. They need to get rid of the Palestinians. The royal family is not going to survive. They'll have to do a transition of power, and it'll be managed by the British and the U.S. almost certainly. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a media stunt, to be honest with you. It's really about protecting his interest, domestically speaking, because it's boiling. Everybody knows that. In Egypt and in Jordan, it's literally boiling. And that rhetoric coming out of the U.S. administration, taking over Gaza, it's just crossing the line. They've crossed the line, and he knows that because he knows these people, of course. And despite the fact that he's been controlled, especially by MI6 and the British Crown, which has already so the rumor goes that he has already a replacement for him. They kept him in the dark, but there is someone already that's been groomed in the UK to replace His Majesty. It's going to be interesting to see how it's going to evolve. But right now, this is protectionism. This is about protecting and to avoid basically the sparkle that will ignite not only a Jordanian revolt, but a much more regional revolt, if you will, because that will ignite Turkey, that will ignite Jordan, that will ignite Iraq, that will ignite a lot of things. And it's really, really so close. I cannot tell you how close this is of being a major collapse, and a major collapse of stability and peace in the region, because it's just too much at stake here. And as I say, the terms that have been used, the ownership of the Gaza Strip, ownership ownership. This is all rhetoric from the colonial empires, you know.
He said it. We're going to own it.
We're going to own it. Yeah, we're going to own it. I mean, this is so, it's like a knife, you know, in the heart of Palestinian, and telling you, I'm going to come, I'm going to chuck you out of your land, and I'm going to hurt you, and I'm going to own your land. I'm going to redo the Nakba. I'm going to redo what the Israelis done to you.
Erase you.
What the, you know?
Yeah, really. So it is that serious, and it's viewed as such. So I mean, that's an extraordinary thing on its own. And look, look what happened in Syria, Fred, where Israel came in 4 days and liquidated the entire Syrian military infrastructure. That showed Washington they could do the same to Egypt. And how's Washington? How Trump's going to view that is, well, we just saved $5 billion a year in aid that we're giving away to the Egyptians. We're always paying, and they're taking advantage of us Americans, and we don't need them because Israel will provide security for the region. You see, and so this feeds into the Greater Israel project. So Syria's disarmed, Egypt's disarmed, Jordan's disarmed, and then Iraq is disarmed, and then there's only one left after that. Well, there's the Gulf states, but assuming they're sweet on the western side, then you just got Iran left, and Turkey, maybe Erdogan making speeches. This is outrageous. I can't stand this anymore. And meanwhile, he's shipping oil to the Israelis behind everybody's back. You know, like, so there's no real resistance in the region once Egypt is disarmed, or Syria is disarmed, Jordan is disarmed. Then it's Greater Israel. And they don't have to occupy it all with Israeli citizens, but they can basically govern it and then start taking little pieces bit by bit. Give some to the Saudis, give them that little bit of Jordan that they've wanted forever, right? And then give a little bit to, well, they'll take Lebanon or half of Lebanon, South Lebanon. They're going to take it. They'll take most of Jordan or whatever's worth taking, and the Golan Heights and any bits of Syria that they fancy. And it's as simple as that. And that process, they'll be happy if that took, 30 or 50 years. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's a biblical thing for them. So, but there's going to be a major backlash. There's going to be some serious pushback. It's going to be more war.
But the question, Patrick, is what then? Jordan said no. Egypt said no. Where do we put the Palestinian people? Is it even possible to even entertain the possibility, and I certainly don't, that the Palestinian will just let that happen without a fight? Okay, what Trump has done here is a declaration of war. It needs to be very clear to everyone. This is not, you don't tell to someone, to an independent nation, even if it's occupied, you don't get to tell them as a nation, I'm going to come and take you on and check you out. This is a declaration of war. And that has consequences. And I can tell you right now, a lot of discussions might be taking place at the State Department because it's all cosmetic. We support our leader, of course, but behind that, I think a lot of people were taken by surprise. And then, of course, this kind of timing with Netanyahu coming to Washington, D.C., having a couple of meetings, he's going to extend his stay, probably go to Miami, maybe see his son, which doesn't want to fight the war, and his wife, which hoped to stay in the United States.
With bags of dirty laundry. Yeah, with bringing her dirty laundry, right?
Yeah, exactly. So look, the guy is not healthy, he's not doing great. And what's behind it? Okay, let's say you get rid of Netanyahu. Who are you going to get? You're going to get Smotrich, you're going to get, this lunatic of, I can't remember his name. Anyway,
Benny Gantz, not much better.
Yeah, who are you going to get? Who's going to show some form of reason and leadership in Israel if you take out Netanyahu? No one. Is it perhaps Trump's goal? Say, look, we're going to do that because Netanyahu has very little in the tank left. And when he's gone, we run the show, and Israel will be, I don't know. Look, everything is possible. Trump is extremely unpredictable, and no one can claim to understand him or read his mind. I think that's just simply just not something we can do. We just have to let the ship fall where they may, and trying to, with the best of our knowledge and ability, to explain and to warn the publics of the danger of this hegemony. This U.S. hegemony is collapsing. It actually has already collapsed. It's just that it takes time for people to come to this realization.
Yeah. Here's USAID. We didn't cover this, but that's a deep state major weapon for propaganda, regime change, quote, democracy promotion has been dismantled. A lot of it's going to be rehoused, those activities, under the direct tight management of the new U.S. State Department, and also the executive branch in a kind of JSOC type executive management sort of role, and then into Langley directly, where it was before USAID was created by John F. Kennedy in 1961. It was all this stuff, National Endowment for Democracy, all that subterfuge was run directly out of the CIA. It's just that they went for this more open model, which is actually quite a clever thing, and it's served the U.S. well. But the problem is too many people know about it, and when you have people like this fronting it, the wicked witch of the West, Samantha Power. I mean, Mrs. Cass Sunstein, and the damage and devastation she's left in her wake as Obama's regime change czar. Tons of accolades as a Harvard. They all get jobs at Harvard or Columbia or one of these Ivy League schools. But she's basically having to delete tweets, and she's been sent packing, and that's a good thing. Okay, I'm not gonna. I give all sorts of applause and everything to these guys, but I've been exposing USAID for over a decade. I've written papers on it, and so. And then now everyone's just kind of discovering, and I'm happy about that. But I don't think the MAGAs understand the depth of control that this agency and how powerful a weapon it's been for dealing with all of these countries. People take that for granted. It's a major operation that's been built up over 60 years, and they've got their tentacles, and they got money laundering, bribes, opposition media. They can switch on and off. They've got fifth columns built all over the place through the Balkans, Africa, Asia, and they just would, depending on who comes into government, they can switch on as a opposition column. It's already set up. It's funded. This is some powerful stuff. Okay.
Oh,
yeah. And they just pulled the plug on it. So I don't think Trump definitely doesn't understand the extent of it. He knows it probably from its role in starting Russiagate and its role with the Mexican border and some of these things that that have real political importance at the moment to him, but the scale and scope of the operation and what it meant to U.S. empire. Or is this the case of, they're going to say, this doesn't work anymore, too many countries are hip to it, we're going to redo it, and we're going to do it now under this new management. That's what it looks like Rubio is attempting to do with this.
Well, that would be interesting to go and interview Hikmet Aliyev, the foreign policy advisor of the President Ilham Aliyev of Azerbaijan. It's a very interesting guy, very intelligent, and I'd love to interview him actually, because this is really someone that could tell us exactly how these guys operate, especially in that particular region, Baku and all this Caspian Sea region. Very interesting to someone, if there's any journalists out there in Azerbaijan, I think this is the person to really talk to with regards to USAID, really modus operandi. I think it's quite clear the DTX, I think, which is the Secret Service and Secret Police of Azerbaijan, has been looking into these guys, USAID, for a very long time. And I think by 2023 already, 2024 in June, they wanted them out. And the name that keeps on coming back was Samantha Powers, and she got involved, from interference with national politics. and the interests and national interests of Azerbaijans. She was starting to really get involved in the middle of the Nagorno-Karabakh, and all the the displaced population and so on. And she got really, really involved in that. So are you an aid development there? You don't do politics. It's aid and development, not politics, not geopolitics. And it's clearly at that stage that I'm sure Azerbaijan wants to, obviously trying to keep a good relationship with the United States. But clearly, if someone can talk about the USAID recent modus operandi, that will be Hikmet Aliyev. So yeah, I mean, I've looked at you, probably not for such a long time, but for me, USAID transpired in my various investigation into the NATO construct, if you will, and you can clearly see that over the years, USAID has really kind of ingrained itself in the NATO apparatus, especially under the covers of disaster relief, and humanitarian assistance, and they're really basically part of the building, the planning, the designing of operation, which provide a perfect cover to insert, operative from the intelligence community. So I think it's all in the open. They're spending billions of dollars over the years. A lot of money has been obviously and will never be seen again. And I think Samantha Powers will eventually, at some stage, will have to answer to some serious questions, because this agency has done a lot of bad. But the best person, Patrick, to talk about is Chris Murphy, the Democrat senator. I think you got a video on that. That'd be interesting for people to hear.
Oh, Chris Murphy. Yeah. Let's well, if you really want to torture our audience with a very unsavory character, there's nobody worse really than Chris Murphy when it comes to deep state antics. He was really one of John McCain's cross-aisle, cross-party sidekicks there, really dodgy guy. And yeah, his pedigree is legend. So this is February 5th, 2025 here. This is on C-SPAN. Let's bring this up on stage. And so this is a video featuring your friend and mine. I'm just kidding. He's not our friend. Chris Murphy. Listen to this.
I am grateful to be standing here with incredibly patriotic and smart colleagues who join me in this outrage and who commit to doing whatever we can to stop this assault. I am pleased now to introduce one of those individuals leading the charge, the senator from Connecticut, Senator Chris Murphy. So Elon Musk has been floating all sorts of awful, terrible conspiracy theories about what happens at USAID. Let's make it very clear that every single day, America is safer because of what happens at USAID.
Yeah.
USAID fights terrorist groups all across this world, making sure that we have the underlying causes for a retreat to terrorism. USAID chases China all around the world, making sure that China doesn't monopolize contracts for critical minerals and port infrastructure all around the world. It supports freedom fighters everywhere in this world. Up until yesterday, delivering firewood, for instance, to the brave Ukrainians on the Eastern
Front. I can't take it no more.
But let's not pull any punches about why this is happening. Elon Musk makes billions of dollars based off of his business with China. And China is cheering at this action today. There is no question that the billionaire class trying to take over our government right now is doing it based on self-interest. Their belief that if they can make us weaker in the world, if they can elevate their business partners all around the world, that they will gain the benefit. But there's another reason this is happening. They're shuttering agencies and sending employees home in order to create the illusion that they're saving money in order to do what? Pass a giant tax cut for billionaires and corporations, right? This is all a smokescreen, a shell game, in order to turn this government over to a handful of unelected billionaires and corporate interests, and we are not going to let them do that. So we will use every power that we have in our disposal in the United States Senate. My colleagues will do the same thing in the House. This is a constitutional crisis that we are in today. Let's call it what it is. The people get to decide how we defend the United States of America. The people get to decide how their taxpayer money is spent. Elon Musk does not get to decide. We are weaker today than we were yesterday. China sees that, Russia sees that, and they will take advantage. Our job and your job together is to raise our voices, raise the alarm, so that this crisis, this emboldening of our enemies, doesn't last a second longer than it has to. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Really, really important.
And so I was like, well, how do I know Chris Murphy? Yeah, there he is at the Maidan, ahead of the coup in February of 2014, next to John McCain and Oleg Tanyabuk, Victoria Nuland's a neo-Nazi pal in Kiev. There they are, basically trying to whip up angry mobs of far-right nationalists in Ukraine to overthrow Viktor Yanukovych, collapse half the country, and start a civil war that led to the war, of course, that we see in Ukraine now. That's Chris Murphy in the blue tie, just behind the right-hand side of John McCain there. That's who he is. So he's an absolute deep state actor. And John McCain's International Republican Institute, or whatever it's called, this so-called think tank that gets USAID funding. Lindsey Graham's on the board. Half these guys are taking, second salaries through their involvement in some of these organizations. I mean, it's so dirty. And these are the people that ran up a $37 trillion debt in the United States over the last 20 or 30 years. And they're just constantly feathering their nests. And so none of this has to do with American interests. Yes, it has to do with corporate interests in out of the United States and internationally. But, to say that, all these clandestine operations are keeping Americans safe is a freaking joke. As is the idea that USAID is fighting terrorism. It's ridiculous. I mean, they're dropping all sorts of aid to different terrorist groups, and who knows. I mean, so this guy is unbelievable. He is consummate deep state. That's the bipartisan deep state. Chris Murphy is a perfect example. He's right next to John McCain and Lindsey Graham and these guys. The only difference is Lindsey Graham's kissing up to Donald Trump. He's just shamelessly sucking up to him for whatever political reasons, and to protect his little fiefdom, what he's built up over the years as a U.S. senator from South Carolina. But he'd just be ready to basically stab Trump in the back at the first available opportunity, because that's the type of person Lindsey Graham is. But that's the real Washington set there. You can see they're very angry.
Very angry. I'm happy, actually. He gave us a clue about where the money has disappeared, where the money vaporized in Ukraine, because in his speech he talks about bringing firewood to the Ukrainian troops on the battlefield. So that's where your money is. It's in firewood. That's where it is. Billions of it, because of course Ukraine has no tree.
We thank you to USAID for bringing firewood to the front lines. We thank them very much. And Donald Trump, congratulations. So
it's going to be a hot winter.
His days are numbered. I don't even get into that, but they're calling. He's freaking out because the U.S. and the Russians are calling for elections now, exactly as we've been talking about, right, over the last month. That's, of course, we were ahead on that talking point, but that's Zelensky's. They're freaking out. They're just like, oh my God, because there's no future for them. Zelensky.
Yeah, he doesn't want to see Zaluzhny coming near him, because I think his day will be counted. But I don't think they need Zaluzhny. I don't think they need anybody else. But as I say, we could dedicate a complete a program just to talk about Zelensky futures, because I think it's coming to an end, is for sure. Yeah,
that's for sure. Freddie Ponton, 21st Century Wire. You can check out Freddie's work. Just go to the website. He's in the archive there. Under our editorial team as well, and you'll see his work posted regularly. Follow Freddie on X. There's his address along the bottom of the screen here, Freddie_Ponton. Do follow Freddie on X and also retweet his work and share his work. We're all being shadow banned quite heavily at the moment, so this is we do need your help and support in that sense as well. But Freddie, thank you very much. I really appreciate the conversation, and yeah, there's just so much going on. I hope we did some of it justice, but yeah, incredible times,
fantastic. It's been great. Thank you for having me, Patrick. Thank you.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. That is Freddie Ponton. This has been another great edition of the Midweek Wire. And ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we do, and we're adding some new things to our programming at 21stcenturywire.com. If you like what we do consider supporting us. We're having our winter fundraising drive at the moment. I know a lot of you are either tuning in to the Sunday Wire live here on all these different platforms and now midweek as well. But do consider donating to our winter fundraising drive. Just go to 21stcenturywire.com, and there's different options where you can support us there, including PayPal, crypto, donations, credit card, whatever. We'll accept anything. We really appreciate any level of support that you can bring us as well. We are planning to do quite a lot in 2025. We need your help to do that. This fundraising drive basically funds our operation for the next 12 months. So it's a very, very important time of the year. A lot of you guys out there, I know you love what we do. You support us, and we're asking you to keep supporting us to do it again. We need your help now more than ever. But that's all we have time for today. Again, I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host. This has been a very enlightening discussion, and we'll continue this. Probably we'll have a X space we'll be doing on that platform, panel discussions, audio with some of our guest friends. We'll be doing that probably in the next couple of days, probably maybe on Saturday evening, European time, and they'll be in the afternoon, late afternoon U.S. time. So that's something to look forward to. And of course, the Sunday Wire. There's a lot of stuff going on. Appreciate you guys. We're going to be signing out now. And thank you again for tuning in to this live broadcast. All the best.